Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. And it sounds like the Xbox Series is about ready to get even better. A new feature has been discovered online that could actually be quite game-changing, so we'll talk about that a little later on in the video and how it will impact the Xbox Series S and the X. Now also, if you like numbers, both PlayStation and Nintendo, they revealed their fiscal year report, and wow, Nintendo continues to absolutely impress. Very exciting things over there. And then PlayStation, while they might have missed their target, they seem pretty confident for next fiscal year, so we'll talk about both of those later on in the video as well. Per usual though, if you do find yourself enjoying the video, go and hit that like button below, as it does help out the channel a ton. And while you're at it, hit that bell notification and subscribe button as well. That way you can keep up to date with all of the latest gaming news. Other than that, though, let's just go and jump right into the video, starting off with Nintendo, as they just announced a brand new event. Now, this isn't quite that big Nintendo Direct that many of us are expecting to happen next month in June, but the cool part about this is that Nintendo did reveal an Indie World Showcase that's actually going to make its debut tomorrow on May 11th of 2022. So this one is really exciting, as there's not much of a wait here at all, and you can actually take a look here where they said tune in May 11th at 7 a.m. Pacific time for a new Indie World Showcase featuring roughly 20 minutes of information on upcoming independent games headed to Nintendo Switch. So this is a 20-minute long showcase, which gives them plenty of time to showcase several games here. Now, I know what a lot of people are probably thinking, and that is, will they finally show Hollow Knight Silksong? There's been a lot of questions about when this game is going to release, and of course it's going to be a big Nintendo Switch game, so could it possibly show up here? I'm not entirely sure, but I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that this is finally going to be the year that we do see Hollow Knight Silksong, maybe as early as tomorrow. Beyond all that, though, you never really know what to expect when it comes to these indie showcases. There's going to be plenty of surprise games that pops up here, and per usual, if you do miss out on this event, I will keep you updated by giving you a summary tomorrow after it happens. That's why you subscribe. I'm always going to keep you up to date with all these events, big or small, including those ridiculously long Xbox indie showcases as well. Let me know in the comments below, though, are there any games that you're specifically hoping will be at this Nintendo Indie World Showcase? Next up, we did get a big update for Gotham Knights, which is one of the more highly anticipated games that's releasing in 2022. It is set for an October 25th release, but today they did reveal 13 minutes of gameplay for a couple of their playable characters such as Nightwing and Red Hood. Now, in terms of its actual gameplay, I think that it looks pretty solid overall. I am not entirely sold on the combat. It still seems a little slow and clunky, but hopefully they'll get that upgraded by the time of its official release. Other than that, it seems like as a pretty engrossing world, and I mean, if you're really into the Batman universe, I think that this is one that you're definitely going to want to pay attention to. However, the big news here is actually an update on the platforms it's releasing for, as it's no longer going to release on the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. You can actually take a look at their official statement made here, where they say, please note, to provide players with the best possible gameplay experience, the game will release on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC, and will not be available for PlayStation 4 or Xbox One consoles. So there you have it. Gotham Knights is now officially a next generation exclusive, which I think is going to make some fans very happy. I have seen a lot of people online kind of ask the question, where are all these next generation exclusives and when are we going to see that big jump? And I think over the next 12 months, we are going to start to see more and more of these studios kind of make that transition over to the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series. At the same time, though, I do understand that there's going to be some disappointment from some fans that have yet to make that transition just yet. So there is that as well, but either way, Gotham Knights is now the next high-profile release to be a next-generation only game, and again, it will release on October 25th of 2022. Let's go ahead and talk about Xbox, though, as something interesting seems to be brewing behind the scenes regarding the Xbox Series X and S, though we'll first kind of talk about the Xbox Series S. Now, the thing about this particular platform is that it's sold as a budget-friendly next-generation option. On one side, you have the Xbox Series X, which on paper is the most powerful console on the market, but then you have the Xbox Series S, this budget-friendly option at just $300, and it offers all those next generation features. It can play a wide variety of games at 60 frames per second. It has a solid state drive for that insanely fast load times, and then it's also capable of ray tracing as well. However, in order to get it down to $300, they did have to make some sacrifices. And one of those sacrifices was by removing the disk drive. This is a digital-only platform. But what if they could change that? Yeah, that actually might be an option. It has now been spotted that Microsoft has filed a patent for a method of externally validating ownership of game disks, which could let Xbox Series S players access physical games. Now that is particularly very interesting, especially if you're coming from the Xbox One and have a collection of physical games. That's actually a really big barrier for the Xbox Series S, because one of the best things about the series consoles is that they are backwards compatible. You can bring all of your Xbox games over to the next platform, no issues at all, unless you buy the Xbox Series S and you have a physical library. Then suddenly you have to keep your Xbox One to play those games, or otherwise they just become useless on the Xbox Series S. But here it looks like they're trying to alleviate that problem, and there's actually a few different ways that they can do this. One would be to just simply allow you to plug in an external drive to your Xbox Series S. That way you can install a disc and then play it that way. Another option that looks like they're trying out, though, is to simply allow you to connect your Xbox One to your Xbox Series S and then use your game that way. But this is where things get really interesting, because what isn't quite clear just yet is on whether or not you'll have to continue to use one of these external drives to play those games. What is being described in this patent is a system that allows an external disk drive to authenticate an Xbox game that then allows the player to access the digital version of that game through the Xbox Series Game Store. That means that very possibly you could end up converting your Xbox physical games to digital entitlements, as Brad Sams pointed out over on Twitter. Brad Sams, which is a very good Xbox and Microsoft source, stated this over on Twitter. Back in 2018, I wrote about a disc to digital for converting your Xbox physical games to digital entitlements. Looks like Microsoft got the patent for it recently. Now, what this means is that you'd be able to pop your physical game into your Xbox Series, and then it would allow you to download your game digitally, which would kind of give you the best of both worlds. For those that do like to collect physical games, such as myself, you're still going to be able to do that, but on top of that, you're going to get some of those benefits of digital games as well. So this is actually a really cool middle ground, though at the same time we need to see exactly how all of this plays out. For the time being, this is just a patent and nothing is necessarily 100% guaranteed, but at the very least this is something worth paying attention to, as this could be a game changer, especially for the Xbox Series S, but depending on how it's implemented, it could also be very beneficial for the Xbox Series X as well. Moving on, though, both Nintendo and Sony revealed their 2021 fiscal year reports, so we'll go over both of those today. First, starting off with Nintendo, as it had yet another absolutely outstanding year. Truthfully, what Nintendo has done this generation with the Switch has been insane, especially when you start to take into consideration of how much of a failure the Wii U was last generation. We'll actually talk a little bit more about that here in just a second, but Nintendo did reveal that Switch shipped 4.11 million units for the quarter, which was January through March of 2022, and this does put the total Switch shipment up to 107.65 million units worldwide. That is absolutely astounding, and to just kind of put things into perspective on what type of turnaround that we're looking at here, the Switch has now shipped more consoles than the Wii U did total software. That should never happen, but that's the type of turnaround that we're talking here for the Nintendo Switch. That is why it has been just so incredible to see what they have done this generation. It doesn't look like there's going to be much of a slowdown this year either, as they're forecasting another 21 million Switch consoles be sold throughout this fiscal year ending March of 2023. This would mean that there is a very real chance that the Nintendo Switch by the end of this fiscal year will be the third best selling console of all time, surpassing both the PlayStation 4 as well as the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. Now, it would still be a little ways away from the Nintendo DS and the PlayStation 2, which both sold more than 150 million units worldwide. But depending on the Switch's momentum after this year, we could actually see it near those numbers or maybe even top those numbers in the long run, but we'll have to kind of see how all of that plays out. This success goes well beyond just their hardware, though, and this is something that we've really been seeing all generation long. That Switch effect is a very, very real thing. Their first-party games have been blowing up. It is crazy to watch just how well their games are selling. And I mean, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, that's at 45.3 million units sold now. Animal Crossing New Horizons, 38.6 million units. And then, of course, you have Smash Ultimate, Zelda Breath of the Wild, Pokemon Sword and Shield, Mario Odyssey. All of those games have sold more than 20 million units. Again, what they're doing is absolutely crazy, but this was actually a big question last year in 2021, leading up to the release of Metroid Dread. Would that Switch effect translate into Metroid? And I'm happy to say that very much has been the case. It is now official that Metroid Dread is the best-selling entry in a franchise at 2.9 million units sold. It did surpass Metroid Prime, and this is great news for the franchise. And hopefully, with this type of success, we start to see more of these 2D Metroid games in the future. I don't want to see another hiatus where we don't get one of these games for yet another decade. I do hope that we see more of these 2D Metroid games. But either way, it is really exciting to see Metroid Dread become the best-selling entry in the franchise, and this bodes very well for Metroid Prime 4 when that does eventually release as well. Now, that wasn't the only interesting thing in terms of software, because Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, that is now the best-selling Pokemon remakes of all time. It ended up selling 14.65 million units worldwide, which was in addition to Pokemon Legends Arceus, which sold yet another 12.64 million units. In total, the Pokemon franchise last year sold nearly 35 million units. How crazy is that? And just to think, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, that is set to release later this year. Yeah, the Pokemon franchise is huge, and it'll be really interesting to see just how well Scarlet and Violet sells later this year, being the second mainline entry this generation. Either way, though, big congrats to Nintendo, the Pokemon Company, as well as Metroid. Very exciting to see Metroid Dread become the best-selling entry for the franchise. Now, as for Sony's fiscal year report, it actually kind of reveals just how much they have been struggling with the chip shortage. This really has been something that Sony has been dealing with all generation. The demand has been there, but because of those semiconductor issues, this has really hurt them this generation, and it did show up here in this fiscal year report. They did reveal that the PlayStation 5 shipped 11.5 million units in the fiscal year of 2021, which is actually down from their initial target being 14.8 million. So they did miss their target by more than 3 million, which just kind of shows you how much that chip shortage has impacted Sony. What's interesting here, though, is that despite all of this, they do say that they're very comfortable that they'll reach their new target for fiscal year of 2022, which is even higher at 18 million units. So they do expect to sell 7 million more units this year compared to last year, even though those semiconductor issues are expected to persist. This is something that Nvidia stated, and even Nintendo said today. Nintendo's president today actually said that there's no end in sight to the global semiconductor shortage. So I do find it interesting that despite all this, Sony actually expects to sell about 56% more PlayStation 5s this year. So it does sound like Sony might have some big plans for 2022, and maybe they found a way that they can flood the market with PlayStation 5s throughout 2022. I think that is definitely good news if that ends up being the case. Overall, though, the PlayStation 5 has now sold 19.3 million units worldwide. Their software is doing very well, and they are reporting high profits on top of that. So despite the semiconductor issues, it looks like PlayStation is still doing very good this generation. Let's go and take a look at the poll of the day, though, and with the Xbox network outage over the weekend, I wanted to ask you all, if you have an Xbox, were you able to play your games during the network outage? And this was very interesting to me, as 57% of you said that yes, you were able to play your games, while only 21% of you said no. And this is something that I have seen online where it seems like a lot of people just was not affected by this, and the results here, they kind of back that up. So this kind of makes this whole situation even stranger than what it already was. There was some people out there that seemed impacted by this, and they couldn't play their games at all, including single-player games. But then it seems like there's also a very large part of the community that didn't even know that there was a problem at all, and they were just able to play their games all weekend. I was actually included in that part. I didn't have my console set to home or anything like that, but I didn't have any problems. I was able to play my games, and I was good to go. So I am definitely very interested to hear exactly what happened here and why it happened. And if there was ever a time for Xbox to be transparent, right now would be that time. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.